And the best way for me to prevent getting an infectious disease and having to have you as my doctor is what? Wearing a mask?
No.
I don't need to do that. If I can see they're ready to sneeze or cough, walk away.
You avoid all the paranoid aspects and do something positive. A, good diet. B, you don't smoke, I know. I know you don't drink, at least not very much, so that's pretty good. Get some exercise. I know that you don't get as much exercise as you should.
That's correct.
Get good sleep. I think that the normal, low-tech, healthy things are the best thing that you can do, David, is stay healthy.
All right, well, I'm going to try to do that, and hopefully when I next see you, I will be even healthier than I am today.
I would imagine you would be, and I look forward to that.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Wow, those are very reasonable and sensible words of advice on health by Dr. Fauci from 2 years ago, since he made an exact U-turn on them. And if you talk about those same issues right now, you risk being censored on the internet, and you will most likely be attacked by blue checkmark authoritarians and probably Dr. Fauci himself. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. We got a lot to get into, especially around the Fauci-nator. A lot of crazy medical health policy being exposed for what it really is. Secret tapes from Israeli health officials. Lancet study, conflict of interest. We're going to get into all of that. Plus a lot more if we have time. Lots of major bombshells by Rose McGowan that should have some major significance and impact surrounding the ever-important California recall elections. Man, so much to get into. And again, just so you know, we're going to be releasing another video later on today, specifically on LukeUncensored.com, about all the issues that we didn't get a chance to get into, as well as the issues that we cannot talk about here on this platform. There's so many things I want to tell you, I want to talk about, I want to cover, I want to report on, but I can't. This is why we started our very own platform, LukeUncensored.com. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? And if you want to get the latest alert of when this video comes out, make sure to sign up on our email list, since, of course, every email we release has our latest YouTube video, our latest Luke Uncensored video, as well as exclusive prize giveaways, as well as exclusive content and gear, which will only be available for the people who sign up on our email list. Now, the video that we played in the beginning of this broadcast is eerily similar to something that, of course, that we have been talking about extensively on LukeUncensored.com, something that we've been talking about on this YouTube channel, something, of course, that Joe Rogan still talks about, specifically almost once a week. But we have to ask ourselves, what changed? What happened that is preventing Dr. Fauci from talking about these important issues right now? As, of course, the current Dr. Fauci that we're seeing on the national television all too much is talking about all the paranoid aspects, is talking about masks, is talking about mandates, and now is even going further, as Dr. Fauci just did in yet another interview where he called for banning people from being able to travel through airplanes if they don't take a procedure that may or may not be right for them, that their doctors may or may not recommend to them, which of course has been a big issue of contention. Dr. Fauci is also calling for school children to be mandated to take this procedure if they want to go to school. And according to some medical professionals and my own personal opinion, this is absolutely ridiculous. But the White House isn't declining to rule it out, as the Biden administration has already set up one ridiculous mandate, as Dr. Fauci is predicting that there's going to be many more of these mandates coming that are meant to make people feel like there's no other option but to comply with what Dr. Fauci wants for you and everyone else. There was even top leading FDA members that recently publicly resigned because of what they described as the overzealous pushing of this administration to implement a third procedure on everyone else. These top-level FDA officials said that they wouldn't comply and are resigning because the Biden administration is pushing for them to aggressively do so. Now, again, there's many questions about this fervor push by this administration, by Dr. Fauci for this procedure, as, of course, there's a larger question about natural immunity. People who have gotten the sickness, got better, have natural antibodies, which some studies suggest are far more superior than this procedure, specifically the studies that recently came out of Israel that we talked about a few videos ago. Dr. Fauci was recently asked on CNN, for people with natural immunity, which scientific studies show is superior in many instances, why should these individuals be forced to get the procedure? Dr. Fauci's answer was, quote, "I don't have a really firm answer on that." And you would think he would, since he's trying to tell people that they should have their children taking this and people should be banned from air travel if they don't. It's a major misnomer. That's a very serious concern. We should also not forget that there's a lot of hypocrisy here, as of course members of Congress are exempt from the latest Biden mandate, and so are migrants crossing the border into the United States, which the Biden representative spokesperson Jen Psaki just admitted that these latest mandates that affect most Americans won't be affecting people coming from the Mexican border. Let's not also forget that Dr. Fauci cheers on and promotes protests that work towards his ideology, whether it's BLM or other left-wing causes, while, of course, heavily criticizing other gatherings and attacking them when they don't align with his own personal political beliefs. Now, of course, with the science still not figured out, many important questions still left unanswered, with these people in power using health policies to promote their own political agenda. What is this all about? Well, we got a glimpse for potentially what this could be all about from a hot microphone catching the Israeli health minister admitting that a lot of these mandates aren't about health, aren't about medical policy, but they're about forcing people to comply with what the government wants them to do. As again, the Israeli health minister was asked on a hot microphone, he's recorded, saying that these mandates are intended to pressure people to take this procedure when asked specifically about how there is no medical or epidemiological justification for these mandates. And scientifically, there isn't. Now, coercing, manipulating skeptical people to do what you want them to do, in my opinion, is very unethical, especially when you impose restrictions on them surrounding their daily lives when they are law-abiding citizens that haven't broken any rules except for the made-up ones by these bureaucrats, which essentially only punish people, specifically demographically poor people and black people in the United States. And if we look at the effect of these mandates, they will overwhelmingly affect poor people and black people. And we have to understand that a lot of people are complying with a lot of these mandates and a lot of these arbitrary rules because they're promised that their life will be back to normal if they do so. But it definitely seems like an absolute slippery slope from the very beginning of this, especially with the politicization of the health policy and what looks like clear potential corruption of medical institutions like the Lancet paper, which the mainstream media has been talking about extensively, but fails to mention that 26 out of the 27 scientists that signed on into this paper that detailed that there was no way that this sickness came from a Chinese laboratory, majority of which, 26 out of the 27, were connected to that Chinese laboratory. This, of course, was the letter that called people conspiracy theorists for believing anything other than the official story that this sickness came from bats being eaten at a wet market. Now, after a lot of circumstantial evidence, documentation, and what looks like a very clear conflict of interest, especially with 26 out of the 27 signers of this letter being connected to this laboratory, it really makes you wonder what's going on here, since, of course, this letter was used by the mainstream media and big tech monopoly companies to censor individuals who are raising concerns and counter evidence to this larger, very biased claim that looks like was covering up any possible accountability for a lot of the scientists involved here when it came to this very dangerous gain-of-function research that, according to many medical professionals, had absolutely no scientific backing or results produced from it. Again, we have to understand, this was the letter that the mainstream media got their talking points from, that big tech social media got their orders to censor people from, and now we're finding out that the people's giving out these orders had huge conflict of interests with the story that they were pushing that prevents any kind of accountability coming their way. Now, with the United States setting its eyes on punishing more law-abiding citizens, establishing more coercive mandates, manipulating the general public, hurting them, punishing them, surprisingly, in the United Kingdom, they announced that they are getting rid of lockdowns and ridiculous other mandates, as the British health minister just announced country won't be doing any of those anymore, as he announced that they will not be going ahead with plans for domestic medical passport systems, which of course would allow the government to micromanage every aspect of your existence. This is very surprising news coming from the United Kingdom, but we also have to understand that this is coming from a political institution that is known for being hypocritical and flip-flopping a lot. In the United States, Joe Biden promised no mandates for medical procedures, and now he implemented mandates for medical procedures. So in my opinion, this is overall good news, but people still should be skeptical here. Meanwhile, in France, there are still major, huge demonstrations with awe-stunning amounts of people coming out to the streets almost every weekend now. We have 9 consecutive weekends of huge protests all throughout France against their own domestic passport system. The protests are known to get rowdy, as of course there was less lethal munitions used on protesters, and of course there was many clashes that were absolutely ridiculous and chaotic unfolding in that country, with the people's response to it overwhelmingly saying no to the micromanaging of their lives through a domestic passport system that would allow the government to micromanage your existence in life. And I'm sorry, that's not a system that I want to live in, where I literally have to be checked for papers everywhere I go, as the government keeps changing their protocol, keeps changing their demands of the hoops you need to jump through in order to have the papers to even present. I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. This is a country built on the ideas of personal liberties, personal responsibility, not having our existence in the hands of micromanaging, control-freak bureaucrats that want to tell us what we can and cannot do, while having the ability to deny us basic human rights and having the access to food and water. This is crazy. And the fact that this is happening to some people in France, in Australia, in Canada, is absolutely ridiculous. It's also ridiculous that the United States government has said nothing about what has been happening in Australia, which in my opinion is proof that that is exactly what they want for you. If what was happening in Australia right now was happening in a country where the United States geopolitical powers had an advantage taking over, we would be hearing about it nonstop. If Russia had 1/10 of the policies implemented by Australia, we would be hearing about it nonstop in the mainstream media. Our State Department, our intelligence agencies would be working nonstop, 24/7, spinning the media about how we need to invade them, to protect them, to give them freedom and liberties. Meanwhile, the president of Russia is announcing that, of course, he will not be implementing any of these mandates, since he sees them as, quote, counterproductive. Now, it is important to note that some places in Russia have implemented some kind of mandates, but nationally speaking, these are the latest orders given out by Vladimir, announcing that nothing will be compulsory for its citizens. We're living in a very strange world, but according to my own personal opinion, and yet again, I am not a medical professional, do not take medical advice from watching this YouTube video, but according to my own personal opinion, having informed consent, having personal responsibility, having an open and honest dialogue is far more important and would work a lot better than a lot of these low-level, low-IQ, compulsory, manipulative, extortive, nasty, disgusting measures that the government is turning to, which in my opinion will be counterintuitive in more ways than one. And hey, there's a reason. Harvey Weinstein was a big-time Democrat, huge DNC donor, and I think his actions reflected perfectly some of the policies that they are trying to institute nationally against you. That's just my perspective. If you think I'm wrong, if you think that's too much of a hyperbolic statement, let me know down in the comment section below. If you didn't like anything I did in this video, dislike this video. But if you did, share it with your friends and family members. I got a lot more to say. Specifically, around this issue that I'm showing you a meme about, as I want to get into the latest news with the Rose McGowan, Alanis Morissette, Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein. I want to get into all of that in our virtual safe space secret society some people have called a cult on LukeUncensored.com. Don't forget to check out today's video later on today. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. This is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.